So, Retro Request Party was something that, I don't know why I thought of it. I think it's more because I had the Retron 5, which was this machine that could play Game Boy Advance games, Genesis games, Super Nintendo games, a whole lot of games, really. And I had this thing, I bought it back in like 2015. It was something I really wanted for some reason, and it wasn't cheap either for what it is. And I got it, obviously, and, I started going through my Genesis collection and my Super Nintendo collection. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I only, need one machine to play all these things, and it plays them in, HD, and it really does. I mean, 720p, whatever. Like, the games looked a lot better than they originally did. And, like anything, you get this new gadget, and you use it for a few months or whatever, and then it just kind of sat there. And then it kept just sitting there to the point where I unplugged it, because I have a freaking PS4 and Xbox and this and that and the other. But, the Retron, actually I think the Retron was still hooked up. I forget most of that story. But the Retron didn't do a whole lot. So when I started streaming, I think I originally started streaming like Final Fantasy VII Remake, or was it like Mario Maker? I don't know. Retro Request wasn't my first stream. But at some point, the thought dawned on me, like, well, why don't I just dust this thing off? It's been sitting there doing nothing anyway, the Retron 5. Why don't I do something with it? So I've got all these Genesis games, all these other games, whatever, and that was kind of what inspired it. Welcome to the first ever episode of Chaos Blurs. I'm going to name my channel, Chaos Blurs Retro Request Party. Now, what is that, you may be asking? Well, I have a ton of retro games. I'm going to go ahead and get started with one myself. And then things kept going. And it was like, well, I've got this Elgato capture card. Again, I still feel like I don't know how to stream, but like at the time I really didn't know how to stream, and I'm like, what if I plug the Xbox into it? And as early as episode 2, actually, I was playing Rage and Xbox 360, so it's like, as early as episode 2, the thought occurred to me that, hey, I could do more than just this one little machine. So, I started having GameCube games on the show. I started having other consoles on the show. I started having the Wii U on the show, because the Wii U is a console I still think is severely underrated. And, I had the Sega Arcade Mini in one episode, which is like this little peripheral, whatever. Like, I would do whole episodes based on this. One of my favorites, though, is still the Sega Saturn episode. Like, it's just so hard to get a Sega Saturn to work, to stream on modern technology. I had to, run 2 adapters through it. Like, it was such a pain in the ass that even as nostalgic as I am as a Sega fan, I'm like, why am I doing this? This is such a pain. I think it even messed up during the stream. And then Retro 31 happened. I remember I even just called it Retro 31. Like, this was the only one you needed to watch because it was the reinvention of Retro Request Party. Of course, by now it was 2021. I've been doing this for a couple years almost, and I really wanted to go big. I forget when I started saying let's get retroactive. I always thought I said that in 2021, but then I found at Retro episode 21 I actually say it. This is Retro Request Party episode 21. So let's get retroactive, what do you say? I say to nobody in particular. And I probably said it earlier than that. This is Chaos Blur, Bobby Gaines here with you, and we're going to get retroactive. That's my new kind of slogan here. But anyway, Retro 31 would introduce this groundbreaking concept in which I would run my Elgato through my HD switcher. I have no idea why this thought never occurred to me in 30 episodes. But, let's say, I don't know, maybe we're not really feeling that either, so we decide we'll play a little bit of the, what do you call it there, the Wii U. Well, that is also an option. But, hypothetically speaking, because, you can only get so much Wii U. Let's face it, the system only lasted about a year or two. So, if we run out of games on that, well, we do in fact have the PlayStation 4. That is right. So, yes, as I teased in the introduction, Retro Request Party is now multi-platform. Instead of the Retron 5, where I can play 5 different consoles, now I can play 10 different consoles, 15 different consoles. Maybe that's a lot, but whatever, you get the point. I play a lot of freaking consoles. And then Retro 40 actually was another special edition episode in which I added the PlayStation 2. And truth be told, I'm not the biggest PlayStation 2 fan. I have my own weird reasons for that, but this was one of my favorite episodes of the show, maybe ever. Brought a lot of people in for it, new fans, old fans. It was really when I felt like the retro thing was finally starting to hit. It was like a 40th episode, but I mean, it felt like a really good time. It was like a 6-hour episode. I had people that I knew, people that I didn't know, coming in and commenting and voting, and it was just a fun episode, and it was with a bunch of PS2 games, which I find really ironic, because I have no fond memories of the PS2. I grew up with a Sega. I don't really care about PS2. It was, I can respect it, but I'm not like, oh man, I got to play GTA. Like, okay, yeah, whatever. I had some fun with the actual games, but it was more the people that really made it great. And because of that, eventually Retromania was born this year. We're catching up to the present now. Retromania 42 was the debut episode, and I really didn't think that changing the name of the show would cause, I don't want to say an uproar, but like, people actually cared about that. Like, at least a couple of my friends were like, it's Retro Request Party. Like, and yeah, it's spiritually still Retro Request Party. And now, truth be told, I've thought about changing the name back. We'll see. But, Retromania, Retro Request Party, Retro, whatever you call it, it's my stupid show where I play retro games. But it wouldn't be what it is without my great fans who I plan to recognize in a future segment on this. So I'm just, Retro has gone from this dumb little thing that I did once in a while to like really an event for me. I know I'm not naive. I know people aren't like really marking on their calendars or anything, but like when I know it's a retro day, like when I announce it and I put the trailer out, it's the day before, it's the day of, like, it's a thing. Like, I'm getting the games ready, I've got the cartridges, I've got the controllers, I've got like, a million things hooked up, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what people are going to vote for. There's been sometimes I've had like the Saturn hooked up, and nobody votes for a Saturn game, but I have to have it hooked up anyway, just in case somebody does. But anyway, whatever you call it, however long it's been, thank you all so much for supporting the Retro experience for all this time. Retro 50 obviously not over yet, but thank you guys so much. That was just a brief, not so brief history into Retro.